Hey, how's it going, Pokemaniacs? It's your boy RantNRavinFection, and we're gonna be counting down the top 10 most underrated Pokemon. And specifically, I'm talking about the first three generations. We're talking about Red, Blue, Crystal, Gold, Silver, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, coming from those list of Pokemon. So let's get started. Number 10 most underrated Pokemon. Marowak. Yep, Marowak is the evolution of Cubone. Cubone. Y'all remember Cubone? That little Pokemon with the bone helmet on its head, and it carries this little bone. It's kind of weird. It's like this post-mortem Pokemon that it carries around bones and fossils of like other Pokemon. It's just so morbid and so dark. The character design in itself. But anyway, Marowak is the evolved form. It's much more strong than Cubone. It's actually got really good attack, very high defenses. It's got pretty good special defenses, so it's a very solid Pokemon as far as, being a pure ground Pokemon. Actually, one of the very few pure ground Pokemon in the original generation, Red and Blue. And aside from Marowak being like the ghost in what was that town? That ghost town, Lavender Town, I think. And you had to face the ghost Pokemon, which was actually a Marowak. You couldn't capture it because it was only a ghost. But anyway, I mean, aside from that was like the only prominent thing about Marowak in the particular games. And Marowak was a great Pokemon because not only does it have a naturally good attack, if you capture one with Thick Club, which is a held item that came out in the second generation, Pokemon Crystal, Pokemon Gold, etc., it had it doubled its attack, which is absolutely insane. So you're talking about a physical attack of a base of at least 80 out of a possible 100. So 80 out of 100, and then multiply that by 2. So you're talking about 160 power, powered up attack, physical attack. That is absolutely crazy. Can you imagine an Earthquake or a Boomerang or a Bone Club coming from Marowak? It's just totally devastating. Very underutilized, heavily underrated Pokemon, in my opinion, and so Marowak definitely belongs in the top 10. Number 9. Most underrated Pokemon, Blissey. Yeah, Blissey. Yeah, you know what? Blissey is very underrated in my opinion because Blissey is the evolved form of Chansey, which was a Pokemon in the first generation that had like the highest HP, the highest hit points at the time. It was a very healthy Pokemon. It had a lot of life, despite having like really weak attack, weak defense, etc. But Blissey is even more powerful because she has extremely high special defenses, very high HP. I mean, this is the highest hit points you can find in a Pokemon. Blissey is absolutely jacked. I mean, you're talking about Chansey on steroids, if I can put it that way, or not even Chansey on on some kind of a super fatty overfed diet or something that makes it very healthy. Blissey is very powerful because you can use Blissey as a real tank. Now I know that they've utilized Blissey a lot in the later generations. They've actually done pretty good job on Blissey, such as in the Pokemon, what was it, a Pokemon Tower, the Battle Tower. You could see Blissey quite a few times in there, where you can fight this really powerful Blissey. But I think that still, to this day, Blissey is still underutilized because, I guess it's just because Chansey just is it's kind of a turn-off to have a Chansey in the first place, because, I mean, I know not everybody... Not a lot of people marked out to Chansey, because everybody just saw Chansey as this healing Pokemon. It was just a healer. It had that special move where you could use its HP to fill up other Pokemon's HP in your party, But Blissey is a very powerful Pokemon. It is underutilized because, I mean, I think that, Blissey deserves to be in the final boss fights as well. Like, why can't Blissey appear in the Elite Four. I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. You know, she's incredibly powerful. She can be a real tank because of that super high HP. That those hit points. I mean, it's very hard to even knock out Blissey in one blow. I mean, it's extremely rare. You would have to hit it several times, giving Blissey a chance to decimate her opponents, because, I mean, she can throw, like, you know, psychic attacks, she can throw elemental attacks that could definitely do a lot of damage to her opponent. So I think that Blissey is still an underrated Pokemon. Number 8 most underrated Pokemon, Flareon. Yeah, Flareon is one of the many evolutions of Eevee, which is a normal type, like kind of a fox-like character from the first generation. And Flareon is type Fire. It's got very high attack, which is actually surprising for a pure Fire-type Pokemon. You wouldn't really expect it from an elemental Pokemon such as Flareon. But, you know, it's got really good special defenses, really good special attack as well. You know, Flareon can be a beast. I remember using Flareon back in Crystal, and, you know, it really one of my favorite Pokemon because it had really high attack. I love that. You know, I taught, you know, you can teach it Return, which is like one of the highest normal type attacks available, and it's beastly coming from Flareon. You know, very powerful, very underutilized Pokemon. I think because there's just so many different fire type Pokemon out there that are more popular than Flareon. But Flareon is definitely underutilized, very underrated, really strong catch. Man, go train a Flareon right now. You won't regret it. It's a great fire-type Pokemon. Number 7 most underrated Pokemon, Mr. Mime. Yeah, Mr. Mime from the first generation. Now, you know, Mr. Mime was really kind of a joke to me at the beginning. I just always thought Mr. Mime was... I always just saw Mr. Mime as this joke Pokemon, this comic relief Pokemon, you know, not to be taken seriously. Besides, there was only one Mr. Mime that you can find in the first generation, in Red and Blue. You had to trade an Abra for it with this guy, and then you couldn't even name it because it had its name was like, oh god, Marcel. There you go. That was his nickname. I think named after the famous mime comedian Marcel Marceau or whatever. But anyway, you know, Mr. Mime had very good speed. You know, of course, typical of psychic Pokemon. They're very light. They're very speedy. They're very quick Pokemon. But it actually has very high special attack and pretty damn good special defense as well. So, you know, Mr. Mime, very underrated psychic type Pokemon. I think, you know, because with the overabundance of other more powerful psychic Pokemon such as the Mewtwo's and the Alakazams, you know, Mr. Mime kind of got overlooked, and but Mr. Mime is a really good choice for a psychic Pokemon. You know, it is. Well, at first it was a pure Pokemon. It was a single non-evolutionary Pokemon, but eventually it had a younger kind of evolution, which is Mime Jr., but I think that's just really stupid when they added those baby type, you know, those baby junior Pokemons that just didn't really make any sense. Alright, number 6, the 6th most underrated Pokemon, Donphan. Oh man, Donphan, yeah! Donphan was from the second generation, which, you know, you're talking about gold and silver and crystal as well. Now, Donphan is a pure ground type Pokemon. It's kind of like a miniature elephant. It's almost like a pygmy elephant, you know, this 3 foot tall, bulky kind of elephant-like Pokemon, you know. But to me, Donphan was heavily underrated because, first of all, look at it. It looks really cool. It's got a cool design. It's like a badass-looking pygmy elephant, you know, really kind of cool. Type ground, you know. It had really good HP. It had a lot of hit points. It had very good attack, physical attack, and defenses. The only downside was that it wasn't very slow, and it had subpar special defenses and special attack, which, I mean, it basically made it into a Rhydon. It was essentially a Rhydon. But the, you know, main difference was that Donphan was a pure ground type as opposed to the rock/ground combination. So Donphan actually was probably a better choice when you faced off against a water Pokemon that had like a Surf, you know, compared to a freaking Rhydon, Rhydon was like over pushed in the first generation. Donphan was nowhere to be found in any of the games except in the wild. I mean, you could barely fight it like against other trainers. I mean, you couldn't really find it against you know, the Elite Four. I mean, you know, Donphan is a great Pokemon, great ground type. You know, typical for it to be very slow, but at the same time, it's not the slowest Pokemon. I think it's more interesting than Rhydon or any of these other rock/ground combinations. So it's a really good pure ground type Pokemon, very underutilized. All right, number 5.